This will sound very strange, but Trump's victory in the primary in the 8th state over the former governor of the 8th state, and Trump's name in gematria, Trump equaling 88, and Donald J. Trump in gematria equaling 888, and the Celtics' 8th game win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team in the NBA Basketball League, and the dangerous court storming event on the same day in college basketball after the 8th ranked Duke Blue Devils were beat in an upset by the Deacon Demons. And also on this day, which was a weekend day, the S&P 500 stock market index was closed at 5,088.80 points, and also a prophetic military aviation crash. And much more will be explained in this very, very important video that is predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis on April 4th, 2024. The date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, this video will explain the amazing prophetic signs that occurred on February 24th that confirmed all of the analysis that was given on this channel prior to February 24th. And the signs on February 24th confirm that it was indeed a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the date that it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on March 19th, 24 days after February 24th. And I will explain why that is relevant. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs. God's big picture of signs is an interconnected web. It is through these connections between related prophetic signs that God is telling very important stories that are revealing very important knowledge. For example, it is through God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that he is revealing the way in which Barack Obama will become the president again, which is through the death of Vice President Kamala Harris in a plane crash. For many years, God has been painting this particular picture through his prophetic signs, and along the way he has been developing numerous trails of connected signs that are leading to the precise date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Here is a diagram that illustrates one such example among countless examples. As we can see here, God has demonstrated a number of trails of signs that led to August 24th, 2023. It was known ahead of time that there would be a prophetic sign related to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on August 24th. And then on this day, Vladimir Putin was the first public official to confirm that the Russian general and leader of the Wagner Group that attempted a coup of Vladimir Putin died in a plane crash, which hints at the soft coup that has been unfolding in America in recent years. In retrospect, it could have been easily predicted that the Russian general of the Wagner Group would die in a plane crash on August 24th, because it was known that August 24th is 54 days before October 17th, which was another date God was pointing to ahead of time. This is why on August 24th, Trump, God's trumpet, had in 5 months been arrested for the 4th time in the 4th state. It also hinted at the number 54. God has been using in his signs the theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War, who were known for fighting valiantly at Fort Wagner. As we can see in this diagram, the trail of signs continues on from August 24th to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 24th. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is an example of a story that God is telling that is extremely important. Actually, February 24th ended up being another step in the trail of signs that is leading to April 4th. The date 224 hints at 2 times 24 and hints at G2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, which is the Greek word for the name Jesus. Greek letters are also numbers, and the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888. The number 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. April 4th will be 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days after the 24th of February. The name Trump in Simple English Gematria is 88, and Donald J. Trump in English Gematria is 888, which is why on February 24th, Trump won the primary for the 8th state to join the Union over the former governor of the 8th state. Trump campaigned in the capital of the 8th state on the day of Harris's third visit to the 8th state this year, which hinted at 3 8s and 888. The other prophetic signs on February 24th also revealed the number 8. This includes the S&P 500 stock market index's close for the weekend at 5,088.80. And the Boston Celtics basketball team's 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team, and the dangerous basketball court storming incident after the 8th ranked Blue Devils college basketball team lost to the Deacon Demons in an upset. The S&P 500 stock market index close at 5,088.80 on February 24th hinted at adding 5 times 8 days from February 24th to reach April 4th. As well, one of the many trails of signs that led to February 24th was the 13 days connection from Super Bowl 58, in which Taylor Swift, who is known for being obsessed with the number 13, attended her 13th Chiefs game this season. Super Bowl 58 hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13, and also hints at the addition of 5 times 8 days to February 24th, which was 13 days after Super Bowl 58. The prophetic significance of these prophetic signs that involved the number 8 that occurred on February 24th are explained in the amazing Trump Wins 8th State video. There are about 50 videos related to Harris's predicted crash on this channel that predict that her plane crash will be on February 10th, 2024. Each of these videos tell a different and very important story that everyone needs to know, and these stories are developed through trails of connected signs that led to February 10th, 2024. In other words, the signs connected to February 10th, and then on February 10th, we received the prophetic sign that was expected in advance of February 10th. The prophetic sign on February 10th that was predicted in advance of February 10th was the big news of pop singer Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private jet so that she could attend the Super Bowl. This prophetic plane sign and the important stories that God is telling that relate to this are explained in the must-watch Swift Super Bowl video. For example, it will be explained how Swift's race across the Pacific in her private plane, with the goal of reaching the Super Bowl in time, points to the Amelia Earhart prophetic sign and her disappearance in a private plane as she was flying across the Pacific Ocean with the goal of becoming the first woman to fly solo around the world. The Amelia Earhart video on this channel will explain how the date of Earhart's plane crash on July 2nd, the date 7/2 in 1937, confirms the addition of 7 times 2 days from Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private plane on February 10th to reach the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in her private Air Force plane 7 times 2 days later as she flies across the country. After flying across the ocean, Swift landed her plane at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, and Harris is predicted to crash in St. Louis, near where the paths of the 2 great American eclipses will engender an X on her flight path either from LAX Airport to Washington, D.C., or from Washington, D.C. to LAX. What I am saying is that when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all 50 of the videos that tell the different stories from God through different trails of signs that led to February 10th. Then watch the Swift Super Bowl video that explains the signs that occurred on February 10th and how they point to the date of Harris's predicted crash on April 4th. What I am saying is that the videos in which it was predicted that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash on February 10th are 100% correct. What I am saying is do not skip these videos that are predicting February 10th. They must be watched. If you do not watch these videos and learn about the important stories God has been telling, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God for Harris's death in a plane crash. Believe me, I know far better than you why God is giving this prediction, and it is so that you learn the information that is contained in these 50 other videos that predicted February 10th. All right, what you just heard was recorded prior to March 3rd, after February 24th. At the time, it was also known that God was pointing to March 3rd, which is 8 days after February 24th. And March 19th, as I just mentioned, is 8 plus 8 plus 8 days after February 24th. And this is why it was known that March 19th was a date that God was pointing to. It was thought at the time of the original recording of this video that March 19th would be the date of the end of the Trail of Signs, no more steps afterwards, and that it would be the date that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash. However, more insight has come to light since then, and not only was March 3rd a step in the Trail of Signs, March 19th is a step as well. I am recording this on March 19th, but it has been known for a number of days that March 19th would not be the date and would be a step in the Trail of Signs leading to the date 8 days later on March 27th. All right? So we have a pattern here, which I didn't realize at first. We have these signs involving the number 8 on February 24th, which I will explain in this very profound, important video, extremely important video. And those signs communicated this pattern of 8-day intervals. March 11th was also a step in the trail, and that wasn't expected. Okay, so you have March 3rd, then Well, March 3rd being 8 days after February 24th, and then 8 days after March 3rd is March 11th, another step, and I'll explain the signs that occurred on March 3rd and March 11th at the end of this video, after I have completed explaining the signs that occurred on February 24th first. All right, and then as far as what could be expected for March 19th, that won't be in this video because today is March 19th and I haven't done any analysis yet regarding it. All right. Now, there will be a mention in this video of 4 signs, 4 prophetic signs that occurred on February 24th that involved the number 8. And that is why it is 4 times 8 days, which actually hints at the 48th president, who will be the Antichrist, Barack Obama, after Kamala Harris dies in a plane crash. So it is March 27th is 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 days after the signs involving the number 8, and there are 4 of them. All right? Just quickly, Trump won the 8th state in the primaries, beating the former governor from the 8th state. This was on the weekend when the S&P 500 stock market index was closed at 5,088.80. Oh, and by the way, Trump in gematria equals 88 and 888, Donald J. Trump. And also, there was the sign involving the Celtics and their 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over their next team, and the dangerous court storming incident in college basketball when the 8th-ranked Duke Blue Devils were upset by the other team named the Deacon Demons. Anyway, there's much more to this. Believe me, you need to watch this video. Don't think that you know enough as to what all of what I just said meant. If you want to know what God is communicating, you need to watch the videos. If you just want to know the date of the prediction and 1 or 2 things, fair enough. But you will have missed the entire point of the prediction from God, and it is to communicate the knowledge and insight that are in the videos. So you need to watch all of this video. So there's the 4 signs gets us to March 27th. Just keep this in mind as this video unfolds, that it was recorded prior to this insight, and it'll be talking about March 19th from time to time, but March 19th is a step in the trail at these 8-day interval dates with signs on them. It was not learned until first of all, this date here, as we can see, proves that this email was composed on February 25th. So just 1 day after February 24th. All right, it was learned a couple of days ago that February 24th was Purim, Adar 14 in the Hebrew calendar. Purim began at sunset on February 23rd. This is why we had a Antichrist sign on February 23rd. Okay, the date 223 hints at 223 and the 48th prime number, which hints at the predicted future 48th president who will be the Antichrist, Barack Obama, after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on March 19th. The Central Park Owl sign that connected to the Rice Owls college football team's quadruple doink. That's explained somewhere else. On February 24th, we received the Harris aviation crash sign we expected. Okay, and so therefore, what I'm saying by that is that February 24th was a step in the trail of signs leading to Harris's predicted aviation crash, which is why on February 24th we had an aviation crash. That was a prophetic sign. What was that sign? Okay, here are the 2 links. There's 2 aspects to it because one of the confirmations of the aviation crash sign is the White House statement regarding the aviation crash sign. Okay, so it was a national news story, obviously. The helicopter crash that occurred on February 23rd And the governor announced the identities of the fallen on February 24th. Okay, so that's why it was a 2-day sign. The crash happened on the 23rd, but the governor announced the identities of the soldiers that died on the 24th. Okay, Biden's official statement was also on the 24th regarding this crash. And again, Purim went for these 2 days, the 23rd into the 24th in the Hebrew calendar. The ages of the two and the Feast of Purim is relevant. It's a feast in the Hebrew calendar if you don't know, and I'll explain here. The ages of the two National Guardsmen are 36 and 42. These are both Antichrist numbers in God's big picture of signs. 42, because in the Bible, the period of the Antichrist is mentioned 7 times as being a 42-month period. And God uses the number 36 in his signs because it hints at 666. It hints at 3 sixes, but also 36 is 6 times 6, and also the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. All right. 2 men. So there were 2 that died. 2 men hint at 2 antichrists. Hence the ages of the 2 men that died also hint at the antichrists. The 42-year-old's name is Joshua. Joshua equals Jesus. The name Joshua comes from Yeshua, which is the Hebrew for Jesus. Or rather, Jesus is the English for Yeshua, okay? Which is also translated to Joshua. The date 224 hints at G2424 because 224 hints at 224s. And G2424 is the Greek word in the Strong's Concordance for the name Jesus. The age of 42 is a reflection of 24. 42 equals 42 months in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, which describes a dragon. And in God's signs, he has been using helicopters as symbolism for the dragon in Revelation chapter 12. Furthermore, also God has been using helicopters in his signs as symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist, described in the book of Ezekiel, would have been a Tav mark, which in Paleo-Hebrew was an X, and long story short, the X is symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. There are many signs involving X in God's signs, including the X social media platform, just for example. But also helicopter rotor blades are in the shape of an X. And so that's another reason why God uses these helicopters in his signs. And so with this helicopter crash, we have Revelation chapter 12 dragon and also mark of the Antichrist symbolism. They, the 2 in the helicopter, were flying an H-64, Delta Apache helicopter. 64 hints at 6 times 4 equals 24. And again, it was on the date that it was on the 24th that their names were announced. The report is that the temperature at the time was 64 degrees. Again, another hint at 24. This is a second witness to the relevance of 64 hinting at 6 times 4, the Delta 64 Apache. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. Okay, and so, all right, now, the 224s, the 64 degrees and the Apache 64 Delta Apache helicopter give us another 2424. Again, making the date 224 hint at G2424, which equals Jesus, which equals Joshua. They, the two that died, were stationed in Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, which hints at Antichrist king and also King of Kings, Jesus, was born in Tupelo and died at the age of 42, just as one of the two men that died. Okay, so he also died at the age of 42. Both have a connection to Tupelo. The report is that there were at least 2 gusts of wind at 21 miles per hour at the time of the crash. And 21 is 7 plus 7 plus 7, which is Joshua, judgment, walls of security symbolism, because in the book of Joshua, Joshua led the Hebrews, or rather the Israelites, around the walls of security of Jericho in a symbolic 3 sets of 7. They marched around once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. And God frequently uses this as symbolism in his signs, 3 sets of 7. 21 miles per hour, 7 plus 7 plus 7. Okay, exactly 999. It must be days. Let me just, days. Typo there. There should be days. Okay, so exactly 999. Okay, so the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. And God also frequently repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. Exactly 999 days before this helicopter crash was the day of the sign involving the wall at the entrance of the birthplace of Elvis Museum in Tupelo, Mississippi, on June 1st, 2021. So that is amazing, because these 2 men in the helicopter that crashed near Tupelo. They were stationed in Tupelo, and it was 999 days after this other Tupelo, Mississippi sign. How often do we have Tupelo, Mississippi signs? Actually, I can only think of one other one off the top of my head. Okay, and so that's an amazing connection, therefore, because 999 is a very important number, symbolizes God's judgment, and that's what is the case with both of these prophetic signs. Because, as I just wrote here, someone stole the Elvis sign. Okay, that's what happened on June 1st, 2021. Someone stole the Elvis sign, a literal sign that was a prophetic sign. What was stolen was the name Elvis in Elvis's handwriting signature. It was a handwriting on the wall sign. That is an idiom that comes from the book of Daniel, when the mysterious hand wrote on the wall regarding judgment for the king of Babylon. Okay? So the sign was actually Elvis's handwriting signature, the name Elvis. It was stolen off the wall. The wall that it was stolen from is actually a brick wall, which is classic, wall symbolism, right? Now, to elaborate a little bit more, this was on the same day as another Tupelo sign, in the sense that it was a James Earl Jones sign. And James Earl Jones, like Elvis, was born right near Tupelo, Mississippi. James Earl Jones is also king symbolism. He was the voice of the Lion King, just like Elvis is the king of rock and roll. And he also played King Jaffe Jaffer in the Eddie Murphy Coming to America movies. He read the audio King James Bible, James Earl Jones. And he was also Darth Vader, which is Antichrist king symbolism. But anyway, the sign on that day was the viral news story of the 3-year-old that said she wanted to have a dead Lion King, a dead Mufasa cake, depicting the dead Mufasa on her cake, so that people would be sad and not want to eat the cake so that she could have it all to herself. Kind of humorous because it's a 3-year-old. And so anyway, that was the sign on that day that incorporated another king, the voice of the Lion King. All right, so anyway, and that's, again, how the big picture of signs works. It works on the principle of second and third witnesses, which is why I mentioned it. It proves that this Elvis stolen sign was a sign, which in turn proves the 999 days connection to the prophetic plane crash near Tupelo with the men stationed from Tupelo. All right? Okay, so Elvis died at the age of 42 in 77. This Joshua aviation crash sign in Tupelo, Again, Joshua because of the wall symbolism and also the 7 plus 7 miles per hour and the connection to the wall in Tupelo, right? Okay, so, and Joshua led the Israelites around the walls of security. That's why I call this a Joshua aviation crash. Furthermore, one of the men's names was Joshua, as I mentioned, and he died at 42, okay? So this Joshua aviation crash sign in Tupelo was exactly 77, and that's relevant because Elvis died at the age of 42. This Joshua aviation crash sign in Tupelo was exactly 77, as in 1977, weeks after the man flying a plane threatened to crash it into the Walmart, I should say the Walmart in Tupelo. And that's the other Tupelo sign that I was thinking of. I had forgotten that it connected, and I haven't read this paragraph in a number of days. That was the other sign. So we have all three of the Tupelo signs connecting here. That's amazing. Okay, so it was a wall sign because it was the Walmart that this man threatened to crash his plane into, which is, of course, also hinting at the coming crash of Kamala Harris's plane when the walls of security of America collapse, because her death in a plane crash will lead to her replacement and the Antichrist King, hence the connection to Elvis, the king of rock and roll, and Darth Vader through James Earl Jones for that matter. Elvis died exactly 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days, which hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, before his famous Lisa Marie plane that has a lightning bolt, which is symbolism for the Antichrist, on its tail, was homeward bound, which is as in Paul Simon's song Homeward Bound, to Elvis's Graceland estate, which is symbolism hint at the promised land. Of course, Simon also had a famous album named Graceland. Amid celebration in Memphis, which is named after Memphis, Egypt. And Egypt in the Bible is symbolism for the Antichrist system and the world. And the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is symbolism for the Antichrist. And the Graceland estate in Memphis is symbolism for the king's palace. All right. Okay, and so let me see here. Now, this is amazing. Elvis died at the age of 42, no less, which is Antichrist symbolism, 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days before his Lisa Marie plane famously returned homeward bound to his estate in a big celebration in Memphis. It's a big prophetic sign in God's signs, all right? I talk about it in another video, the Paul Simon videos. And by the way, I'll talk about it much more in detail there. You need to watch those Paul Simon videos for this most important, amazing prophetic sign, all right? Now, the day that it returned, which was February 22nd, 1984, was exactly 40 years. Okay, and that hints at the Exodus in Egypt, out of Egypt as well, because the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years after leaving Egypt. And again, Memphis is Egypt symbolism, okay? So the plane returned 40 years before, just like the Israelites left Egypt 40 years before they entered the Promised Land, okay? So the plane returned 40 years to Memphis before the Paul Simon sign on February 22nd, 2024, which was the solar flare, which is explained in the Paul Simon videos. Okay, 222 was 2 days before 2 National Guardsmen from Tupelo died in a plane crash. And again, Paul Simon connects to Graceland because of his Graceland estate. All right, so, because of his Graceland album. All right, and also the 40 years connection to the Paul Simon sign. All right. On February 6th, a CH-53E Super Stallion helicopter traveling from Creech Air Force Base in Nevada to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, California, crashed amid a winter storm, killing all 5 U.S. Marines on board. These 5 deaths in the 36th state, which hints at 666, were 5 days before the Super Bowl in Sin City, Las Vegas, in the 36th state. It was Super Bowl 58, and 5 deaths in the CH53E hints at 53 plus 5 equals 58. Super Bowl 58 hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13, and the singer who is obsessed with the number 13, Taylor Swift, attended her 13th Chiefs game this season. The 2 Chiefs antichrists in Revelation chapter 13 that hints at, and that was 13 days before the other military helicopter crashed on February 24th, the one that we just discussed, which again was symbolism for the dragon and the antichrists in Revelation chapter 13. The 2 men, 2 antichrists, both their ages, as I explained, etc. Okay, so again, that crash on February 24th, the helicopter crash, the military helicopter crash, was 13 days after the Super Bowl that hinted at the number 13, which was 5 days after the 5 men died in the other helicopter crash. Okay. By the way, also, the 13 plus 5 days is 18 days, which hints at 6 plus 6 plus 6. So in other words, from in between the 2 helicopter crashes, it is 6 plus 6 plus 6 days, which also hints at the Antichrist. Okay? And the connection in the middle of all of this, and also the other crash, was in the 36th state. The Super Bowl and the crash were in the 36th state, and that hints at 666 as well, because the number 36 hints at 666, as I explained earlier. The second helicopter crash sign, the one on February 24th, was on Purim, and the number 13 is symbolic of Purim. That's the point. That's why the 13 days connection between the Super Bowl that was about the number 13 and this helicopter crash on Purim, because Purim is symbolic of 13 is symbolic of Purim. God's people were persecuted by Haman in the Bible, a type for the Antichrist, on the 13th days of the months. This is the reason for the 13s in the Super Bowl and why the Super Bowl was 13 days before February 24th and Purim. Okay. Joshua equals 74 in simple English gematria, but also 74 hints at America and its symbolic birth date on July 4th, 7-4. Okay, so Joshua, which equals 74 in gematria, and the cost of Swift's Super Bowl outfit was compared to the average U.S. household income of $74,000. And that's the average American income, and again, 74 hints at America because of the date 7-4. And so that's why in this prophetic sign involving Swift's outfit, it was compared to the average U.S. income of $74,000. Okay, so Joshua's name was trumpeted by the governor of Mississippi 13 days after Swift's outfit at her 13th Chiefs game. Tate Reeves is the 65th governor, and the number 65 is the 23rd semi-prime number. Okay, and Joshua in English gematria is 444, which makes it a pairing of 23 and 44. And God frequently pairs the numbers 23 and 44 to confirm his signs and connections. As I mentioned earlier, the big picture of signs, the true big picture of signs, it works on the principle of second and third multiple witnesses. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us to confirm a matter, as the Bible says is required, is through pairing certain numbers together, which is why he frequently pairs 23 and 44 together. And I know that God pairs 23 and 44 together because I've been studying God's big picture of signs from morning until night, more than full-time hours, for 6 years. And the reason why 44 and 23 is because the 44th president is also the basketball president who wore jersey 23 in high school. That's really just scratching the surface, though, of the reasons for 23 and 44. But anyway, the point is that this governor, who is the 65th governor, trumpeted, or rather announced, because the Hebrews blew trumpets, when Joshua led them, he announced the name Joshua, whose gematria is 444. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. The Joshua trumpets sign in Tupelo occurred in conjunction with the Trumpet sign in South Carolina. Trumpet God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs, Donald Trump, trumpeted, okay, or sorry, I should say trumpet sounded, trumpet soundly defeated Nikki Haley. Okay, Nikki is a hint at the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day of the American Evangelical Church. The doctrine that Jesus said in Revelation chapter 2 that he hates and is coming to make war with those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, which is the doctrine of the vast majority of evangelicals. It is the evangelical culture today. It has emerged in the last few decades just in time for the end times, really, which is the way it would be if you think about it. The American Evangelical Church is the Church of Laodicea, that is thinking that it is in need of nothing, but does not realize that it is blind, pitiable, and naked. And because they are lukewarm, Jesus wants to vomit them out of his mouth. The doctrine is what produces this. The doctrine, I'm just going to boil it down to be abrasive and controversial so that you get the point. The doctrine is saved by faith alone. The only place in the Bible where this phrase appears is when James said, you see, we are not saved by faith alone. We are saved, or we are justified by our works. And he gave the examples, including the one in the book of Joshua, when Rahab was justified through her actions, which involved risk and sacrifice. Just like, as James also says, Abraham was justified through his actions when he followed through on God's command to sacrifice his son Isaac. He had faith, but he demonstrated his faith. He actualized his faith through his actions. And so this is why the Protestant evangelical doctrine, which Catholics have also adopted, is the Gnostic doctrine that Jesus said he hates. It is literally rooted in Gnosticism because Luther and Calvin were Augustinians. Well, Luther was an Augustinian monk, and Calvin titled his writing Systematic Augustinianism. First of all, the Bible was not meant to be studied systematically, but that's how evangelicals study it. They isolate certain passages to develop their heretical Gnostic doctrine that Calvin passed down to them, and they ignore the countless other passages that flatly, clearly contradict their doctrine on every other page in the Bible, including the writings of Paul, and especially in the teachings of Jesus. But evangelicals interpret the teachings of Jesus through the writings of Paul instead of the other way around, which is how it should be. In any case, they also come up with creative workaround solutions to the clear passages that contradict their doctrine, such as James chapter 2, when James says we are not saved by faith alone. But Protestants, and especially evangelicals, think that they are saved by believing intellectually the correct doctrine. And that's why they are very squirmish to hear someone talk like I am, because it threatens their salvation, so they think. Because if they believe the wrong doctrine intellectually, then they're not saved. Which is why it is satanic deception. It is deception from Satan. It really has a grip on the culture, and they resist any other information and reading the Bible and the context and all the other passages, because they're conditioned to believe that if they even contemplate something different to their doctrine, they aren't saved. It's wicked deception. This Nicolaitan doctrine of our day has been completely overwhelmingly confirmed through God's big picture of signs to be precisely sovereign grace and free grace, which come in the packages of Calvinism and dispensationalism. When the prediction comes to pass of Kamala Harris's plane crash, this will prove this. And this is the purpose of this prediction that is from God. Believe me, I know far better than you why the purpose of this prediction that is from God, and it is to prove what I have just said about the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, which is the doctrine that is the evangelical Protestant doctrine of our day. And it is the root of the bad tree that is producing the bad fruit, which essentially is complacency regarding fear of God. The evangelicals do not have a healthy fear of God, and that is the reason for their works. And furthermore, that why they have a phobia for works in general. They have a bit of a phobia when it comes to works because, they're treading on dangerous ground if they start to believe that they need to do some works to be saved. Because again, if they believe the wrong doctrine, they're not saved. So this is what produces the phobia when it comes to work. It's partly why evangelicals barely do anything and are living lives barely indistinguishable from other non-believers. But there are two parts to our salvation as demonstrated through Abraham. He was deemed righteous for believing, but that's another subject. What does the word believe mean? It doesn't mean, even in the time of King James translation, what people think the word believe means today. And it is in John 3:16, it is a present continuous tense. It means to go on believing. All right? Not just, saved past tense. No one is saved past tense. People are on the road to salvation, on the path to salvation, in the process of being saved. No one is saved until they get and reach the kingdom. And the Bible is very clear. Yes, you can lose your salvation. Yes, you can. Eternal security is a product of Calvinism and sovereign grace. And that is the heretical doctrine. Sovereign grace and free grace both lead to the once saved, always saved doctrine. And also the myth of imputed righteousness as evangelicals understand it, and our righteousness is as filthy rags, one verse that Luther took out of context and twisted to develop his entire theology, and all Christians will be raptured, etc. And so anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. I've given you a little something on doctrine. And so what I was going to say, though, is that as God said in Genesis chapter 22, through the angel to Abraham, after Abraham followed through, he said, "Now I know that you fear me." In other words, God didn't know. That's another thing. That's another Greek corruption from Augustine, the idea that God knows everything. He does not know what we will decide. We have free will. If he did know, we wouldn't have free will. He knows all possibilities. All right. But anyway, God didn't know. It's clear. He didn't know before Abraham followed through. And furthermore, neither did Abraham know until the moment came when he was called to take a risk and make a sacrifice. And so the actualization of one's faith typically involves risk and sacrifice. And that is the primary purpose of the end times and the Antichrist, including the mark of the Antichrist. It is to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians through their following through and devotion, their faith. It's a doing, it's an action. They had faith, so they didn't take the mark, even though it would cost them their job, because the thing is the mark, not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. The reason why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark is because it is judgment for their doctrine, including the dispensational doctrine, which says that it couldn't possibly be the thing because the rapture hasn't happened yet. Okay? In other words, that doctrine is that the writings of Jesus to the seven churches doesn't apply to them. It applies to those left behind after the rapture, which is absurd because Jesus wrote those letters to the seven churches of Asia Minor long before the rapture. All right, so, okay, that's enough, I think. Make sure you watch the most important video on this channel, especially if you are a Christian, the 23 church signs video. All right, now getting back to the main point here, we're coming to a bit of a climax, not really a climax, but like a bigger element here in this story regarding the prophetic signs that occurred on February 24th. All right. Which confirm the 8 + 8 + 8 days from February 24th to March 19th. Okay. So again, Joshua, as in trumpets in the Bible, the Joshua sign into Pelo, one of the men was Joshua, and okay, so anyway, I've explained it, occurred in conjunction with the trumpet sign in South Carolina on the same day, okay? Trumpet soundly defeated Nicolaitan. Okay, that's why these Nickies and the Nicks keep coming up in God's signs. It's judgment for the church. The main theme of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, is God's warning of judgment for the church, and which is why the only place you will hear this is on this channel, which is why the true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel, because everyone else, well, not everyone else, I'm sorry, but many people have the Nicolaitan doctrine, and although they may be watchers of signs, they mix it with the Nicolaitan doctrine, and that's not good. And so there is why they miss a lot of things. For example, how God is using these Nicks to point to the Nicolaitan doctrine of the American Evangelical Church, which he is very, very displeased with. It is the reason for the end times and why they are happening now. Many of these Christians have this belief because they're in need of nothing, the Laodiceans. They think that the end times are coming now because of the state of the world. But yet, for one thing, the state of the world is the result of them. They're supposed to be the light unto the world, and the reason why the world has become the way it has is because of the state of the church. And not only that, it is because of the church today. That is why the main reason why the end times are happening now, and why God's primary focus on the judgment that is coming is America, his church nation, which is headed for extreme destruction and judgment. God isn't focused on the entire world. That's another, doctrinal problem. God is focused on his Christian, the nations that knew him, primarily, in these end times judgments, which is primarily America, and then secondarily the other English-speaking countries, and then after that the Western countries, the other countries in Europe, and then nominally the Catholic countries. But Catholicism isn't Christianity, so it's debatable as to how much these other Catholic countries were Christian in the first place. But that's why God is primarily focused on the English-speaking countries, the ones that really knew God, the Protestant countries. Well, let's move on. Okay, so what made this story especially noteworthy, which was trumpet soundly defeating Nikki? Okay, again, Trump equals 88 in simple English, and Donald J. Trump equals 888, and he soundly beat the former governor of the 8th state in the primary for the 8th state on the state 24, which is 8 + 8 + 8, okay? So what made this story especially noteworthy is that the 8th state is Nikki's home state, where she served as governor until being trumpeted by trumpet to serve in the UN, which is Antichrist symbolism. So even with that, we have all of this pointing to the Antichrist because he will lead the UN, which is what Nikki left the 8th state to do, lead the UN for the US. Now, but this is the big thing, though. I mean, this was like a heightened news story regarding this primary because Nikki was, in fact, from the 8th state and was the governor of the 8th state until she was trumpeted by trumpet to serve at the UN. Okay, you see how that all works? It's an amazing sign there, in other words. It's just more confirmation of the importance of this sign. It's not just any primary here, this primary in the eighth state. Okay, Donald J. Trump, again, equals 888 in English gematria. On this same day, the Boston Celtics, and Boston in God's signs, especially sports teams from Boston, you could say, are symbolic of America because the spiritual founding of America was in Boston. But also, actually, the Boston Celtics arena is right at the mouth of the Charles River, which is where the Pilgrims landed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony when they came to make the Massachusetts Bay Colony, okay? And so, so that's why Boston in the sign. And on this same day that Trump beat the former governor of the eighth state in the eighth state, the Boston Celtics won their eighth game in a row. At the end of the day, they had an 8-game lead over Cleveland. And Cleveland is a city that God uses to point to the Antichrist or identify the Antichrist, Barack Obama. And just briefly, one reason is that President Cleveland, was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, and he skipped the 23rd presidency. Just like Barack Obama will serve non-consecutive terms, skipping the 45th presidency. By the way, 23 is the 9th prime number, and 45 is the 9th triangular number, and the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. But this was also why the GOAT of basketball, greatest of all time, which hints at the GOAT Antichrist, LeBron James, played for Cleveland, and is from Cleveland, and is known for being from Cleveland. And the big story about LeBron James's career is how he left Cleveland, playing for Cleveland, and then played for the Miami Heat, and then came back to Cleveland in order to win the championship for Cleveland and break the supposed Cleveland sports curse, which is Antichrist curse symbolism. But this hiatus in LeBron James's career, which is the big story of his career, is how he left and then came back to Cleveland, is also symbolic of Barack Obama serving a non-consecutive term and coming back. Well, anyway, President Cleveland skipped the 23rd presidency, and LeBron James wore jersey number 23. All right, and that's just briefly why Cleveland is, okay. So anyway, and also Cleveland is known, the nickname of Cleveland is the sixth city. At one time, it was the sixth biggest city in the U.S., and 6 is 2 times 3, which is at 23. Now, the game of the 8th win in a row of Boston and the 8-game lead, that hints at 4 plus 4 games, and Cleveland, as I just explained, is symbolized by the number 23, and that gives us a pairing of 23 and 44, which confirms the signs and connections, as I explained. The game was played in New York because on 2/24, we also expected signs related to the coming bomb in New York City. Okay? Donald J. Trump, 888, who, by the way, is also from New York, his win in the 8th state over the 8th state governor, the 8th game in a row, which gave the Celtics an 8-game lead over Cleveland on the date 2/24, G2424, is because 24 equals 888, or 8 plus 8 plus 8, which hints at 888, the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek. On this date with these signs involving the number 8, the S&P 500 stock market index on the weekend was closed at 5,088.80. That's another 3 8s. 50 there symbolizes the church. The number 50 symbolizes the church. Pentecost symbolizes the church, and Pentecost literally means 50th day. Also, G500 hints at the 500th word in Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word for Antichrist. All right, and so that's another 8s in the sign on February 24th, because February 24th was a Sunday, and the stock market was closed at this number. Okay, so this hints at 888 plus also the 50 equals the church, which coincided with the Nike sign, the Nicolaitan Church, the American Church of Laodicea. Which, by the way, another thing about Nicolaitan means rule of the laity. And that is the problem. The reason why this heretical doctrine that doesn't line up with the Bible has persisted and become entrenched in American culture is because of the monetization of the church, which Jesus forbid. He strictly forbid preaching for money for this very reason. And the passages that these quote-unquote pastors use to claim that the Bible supports their preaching for money, they take out of context and twist. All right? And furthermore, Jesus forbid calling other people with honorific names, which pastors do when they call themselves a quote-unquote pastor. All right? And so anyway, that's the problem. It is paid pastors. That's one of the roots of the problem. Because if people were to discuss the Bible on their own, people would never, ever, like if someone in jail who reads the Bible on their own and isn't taught how to interpret the Bible through the culture, they will never, ever come to the conclusion of Calvinism. That needs to be taught. You need to be taught how to reinterpret what is being said in the Bible. And that's taught through the institutionalized church system that is inherited from Catholicism, with people sitting in rows listening to a man perform on stage for an hour or so while no one else is allowed to talk. And if they do, they will be quickly escorted out of the building and probably never allowed back in again, which serves to cut off the members of the body of Christ. Another reason for all of this heresy, that is the problem of the Nicolaitan Church. Paid pastors. All right. That basically are paid to perform. And also that leads to the watered down doctrine, because that's why they rarely teach the teachings of Jesus, because it makes people uncomfortable. And so that's why, it just goes on. I mean, that's another problem, right? Okay. So on the same day, by the way, the Dow was closed at 39,131.39. The hours that, 39,131, period. New sentence. 39, as in the 39,000, equals the hours, or hints at the hours from which Jesus was on the cross. And G131, as in the 131 in the 39,131 number, hints at the word in the Greek concordance that means blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the mark of the Antichrist. All right. Anyway, but also the blood on the cross, right? That's why 39 and then 131. And this occurred on the date 24/2/24, which hints at G2424 and Jesus. That's why all of this is relevant here. Okay. There was another Antichrist basketball sign on February 24th. Okay. Court storming is a phenomenon in college basketball, and it can be dangerous. The fans of the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, okay, that's the Antichrist. Also, the Antichrist is the basketball president. The fans of the Wake Demons court stormed and injured Duke Blue Devils. Okay, they injured a Duke player. Okay, now Duke, the team Duke, is the meaning of the name Duke is means second in a monarchy, and Obama, the Antichrist, his favorite basketball team is the Duke Blue Devils, because he is the second in command after the first of the two Antichrists described in Revelation chapter 13, which is Pope Francis. That's why Barack Obama's favorite team is Duke. Okay, there's a lot of misconception, and in my opinion, it's fallacious, that because the second of the two Antichrists is described as a false prophet, therefore that prophet or that person must be somehow related to religion, and therefore Pope Francis, if he is one of the two Antichrists, is the second one. It's fallacious. It's silly. Furthermore, we know from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, for example, that the first of the two Antichrists is first apostate from his seat of power, the chair of Peter, and only then is political. Anyway, enough said. I mean, well, let's move on anyway. So Obama is second, okay, as I just mentioned, second to Pope Francis. The Blue Devils, okay, obviously Antichrist. Furthermore, they played the Demon Deacons, the Blue Devils and the Demon Deacons. I mean, why even have these names? But they are obviously Antichrist. And again, Barack Obama is the basketball president whose favorite team is the Blue Devils. Furthermore, there was a prophetic sign in which he attended a Blue Devils game in 2019. Anyway, also, the Blue Angels is a prophetic sign. When the Blue Angels jet crashed on the day that the Thunderbird jet crashed right after flying over Obama at the Air Force commencement speech in 2016. Okay, the injured Blue Devils number in this court storming was 30, and in the Bible, 30 is symbolic of a king. David and Joseph were made kings at the age of 30 years old, in the sense of the Antichrist king. The court storm came after the Demon Deacons' upset victory over the 8th ranked Blue Devils, the Duke Blue Devils. This is another 8 sign. I mean, the whole court storming happened because the Blue Devils are ranked number 8. And the Wake Forest Demon Deacons were not supposed to beat them. But they did, and the fans got super excited, and then the court stormed. All right? This is another 8 sign on the date 24, on the 24th, which instead 8 plus 8 plus 8, the 24th of the month. Again, Donald J. Trump, well, Trump equals 88, and Donald J. Trump equals 888, and on this day, he won the 8th state over the former governor from the 8th state. All right. And then the Celtics won their 8th game in a row, giving them an 8-game lead. All right. And then there was the court storming with the upset victory of the 8th ranked Blue Devils. I think this also hints at the predicted Obama upset victory over Trump, although Trump is predicted to die in May. And the Antichrist will become the Antichrist long before the election. In other words, it will be very apparent by probably April that there won't be another election. Okay. By midday Europe time, because I'm in Europe, I had realized that 224 would be a step in the trail to Harris's crash. In other words, the day hadn't even started. The day didn't come and go before I realized that February 24th would not be the day and would only be a step in the trail leading to Harris's predicted crash. This is because it was learned that, like Harris, Haley, as in Nikki Haley, is of Indian descent, and that 224, February 24th, was the primary in the 8th state, and because the Lord gave us Harris in the 8th state signs. So there were other Kamala Harris in the 8th state signs, and that just led me to think about it and realize that Nikki Haley's primary in the 8th state would be likely a prophetic sign that would be the step, the expected sign, partly also because she is also of Indian descent. In other words, it would hint at Harris. Therefore, we could assume that because of all of this hinting at Harris, it wouldn't be the day that Harris would die in a plane crash. It would be a step instead. Again, the swift plane sign on February 10th was 8 days after Harris in the 8th state on February 2nd. It was Harris's 3rd visit to the 8th state this year, which hints at 888. The first of the 3 visits this year was 9 plus 9 plus 9 days before February 2nd, and the other one was 9 days after her first one this year, and her visit on February 2nd was her 9th visit to the 8th state. The number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and that's why the 9 plus 9, the intervals of 9 here involving between these visits of Harris to the 8th state. One of these 3 visits was for King Day at the Dome. It's called King Day at the Dome. That's the name of the event, the annual event in the, I think the Capitol. Yeah, it was at the Capitol. Maybe the Capitol building is called the Dome or something like that. Anyway, it was Martin Luther King Day. It's called King Day at the Dome, which hints at kingdom, as in Jesus' kingdom. And that's also hinting at 888, because Jesus is 888 in Greek gematria. This is why, by midday, I did a simple thought experiment and calculated that 8 days after February 24th, okay, and again, the 24th hints at 888, and February 24th hints at 2424, the Greek concordance for the word Jesus, is the date 3-3, which hints at Jesus, because Jesus was crucified at the age of 33 and was resurrected at the age of 33. Okay, so again, we have all of these 8s, all right, and then 8 days later is March 3rd. The quickest calculation to learn if a date is being pointed to are exact months calculations, which can be easily calculated in your mind. Are there any Harris signs on the 3rd of the month in the past? Yes. March 3rd, 3-3 in 2024 will be exactly 4 years, which hints at the fig tree parable of the unfruitful fig tree. Okay, when after 4 years the tree was cut down, in other words, judgment, okay, which is also 48 months, which hints at the 48th president, after the 25 deaths in the Nashville tornado in the 16th state, which hints at 4 times 4 on the 44th president, in which 44,000 people were without power. This was the same day and night as the huge fireball over the Capitol building, which is where the 25th Amendment will be used to replace Kamala Harris. This Nashville tornado, and God is using Nashville in his signs, all right? There were 4 prophetic disasters in Nashville within a year, including this 44,000 people without power. This was the 4th one of them, actually. And pairs of 4s hint at 44, and that pairs with 23, which is why exactly 23 weeks before, or rather after, the tornado and the fireball over the Capitol building, 23 weeks after that, and the 44,000 without power, and the 4th of the disasters in a year, was the day that Biden announced that Harris would be his running mate, okay? And on into the great big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. 3-3-24, March 3rd, 2024, is also exactly 6 + 6 + 6 months, which hints at Antichrist, right? And again, Elvis died 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days before his plane returned, and it has a lightning bolt on the tail of the plane. Okay, so March 3rd, 2024 is also exactly 6 + 6 + 6 months after the man threatened to crash the plane. He was flying into the Tupelo Walmart, and Elvis was born in Tupelo. Hence the Tupelo crash on February 24th, 8 days prior to March 3rd. Later in the evening, I got to work on thoroughly going through the signs and looking for the confirmation connections. Sure enough, God is pointing to March 3rd in regards to Harris's crash. By the way, this is being recorded on March 6th, and the signs on March 3rd confirmed the analysis that I'm getting at here. Okay, so what I'm saying here now is that I confirmed that God is pointing or was pointing to March 3rd. However, as I approached the last of the signs to check, I reached the sign on September 19th, 2020. This was the plane from Atlanta, okay, to Florida, which hints at the flight in the movie Flight, starring Denzel Washington, which is a prophetic sign God used. Okay, this was the day of the plane from Atlanta that was on its way to Florida that dropped 30,000 feet in minutes due to a pressurization issue. Passenger Harris Dewaskin captured the chaos in a video that went viral, and he was the guy on all of the media outlets had on to talk about the incident. This sign had never really connected to the big picture before, yet I knew that it ought to. It was through calculating September 19th, 2020, the date of this sign, to March 3rd, 2024, that it was realized that September 29th, 2020 is exactly 42 months, which is the period of time symbolically in the Bible for the Antichrist, before March 19th, 2024. Okay, this is how I got to learn about March 19th first. This is how I first came to look at March 19th. It actually wasn't through adding 8 plus 8 plus 8 days to February 24th and the signs of eights. Upon further investigation, the connections to March 19th, 2024 are beyond amazing. So, March 3rd, 3/3/2024 was a step, 8 plus 8 days in the trail of signs before March 19th. Okay? I will explain more soon. Regarding the signs that occurred on March 3rd, I'll explain in another video, but actually, you know what? I'll just say Harris was in the news. She, for her big forceful speech calling for a ceasefire in Israel, which is Antichrist symbolism, and also on that day, Camilla, as in Kamala, or hints at Kamala, Queen Camilla, Queen Consort, announced that she was temporarily stepping down, as in Biden stepping down after the death of Harris in a plane crash. Okay, so Camilla said that she was temporarily stepping down from performing her duties because King Charles is not available due to his being treated for cancer. Also on this day, what else? Well, anyway, I forget. So I'll probably make another video regarding the signs on March 3rd. Okay. The bomb and evacuation in New York City. The Lord was also pointing to February 24th in regards to the predicted bomb and evacuation in New York City. As explained, 2/24, February 24th, was 13 days after the Super Bowl 58, which hints at 13, and Swift's 13th game, because February 24th was Purim, which is symbolized by the number 13, which began at sunset on February 23rd with, for one thing, the Central Park, New York City owl sign. This was the day that the famous owl that had escaped the Central Park Zoo was announced to have died after flying into a building. There's lots to this. So the thing is that God's prophetic signs is an interconnected web, and everything connects to other things. It's not linear. It's three-dimensional, just like the Bible. One can take an infinite number of pathways through the Bible, and it is extremely difficult to explain because of this. It is, when you try to explain one part of the web, you end up pulling the entire web. All right, because the owl sign connects to the Paul Simon signs, and so it just goes on and on and on. And anyway, the owl sign in New York City is a New York City sign, and that would be enough of a point to make at this point, I believe. That said, there are also other prophetic signs that occurred on February 23rd, which were learned after this email was composed. Okay. So God uses records for his signs. February 23rd was the largest peacetime evacuation. Okay, so this sentence isn't written well. February 23rd was the largest peacetime evacuation in the UK. Okay, I should write it. On February 23rd occurred the largest peacetime evacuation in the UK's history after a 500, again, G500 is the word for Antichrist in the Concordance, pounds World War II bomb was dug up and transported out to sea, where it was detonated at 9:15 p.m. after sunset, which is when Purim began, because Hebrew calendar dates begin after sunset. Okay? Okay. So again, what I'm saying here is that after sunset on February 23rd, okay, what I'm saying is that prior to February 24th, we expected a sign regarding the predicted dirty bomb that will explode in New York City. So because February 24th is a step in the trail of signs, we can expect something related to this on this date. And that is what happened here. This is what I'm explaining, okay? After sunset on the 23rd, which was the beginning of Purim that went into the 24th, we had this detonation of this 500-pound bomb, World War II bomb, which also resulted in the largest peacetime evacuation. And God uses records for signs to confirm his signs. But what is predicted is that the dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke will result in an evacuation from Manhattan due to the toxicity of the dirty bomb. That's what God is communicating through his signs. He's communicating a bomb and an evacuation, which is precisely what we received with this largest peacetime evacuation for this historic bomb. Now, this is a historic bomb. It's a World War II bomb, and America was involved with Europe in winning World War II. Okay, this digging up of this World War II bomb and this largest peacetime evacuation occurred in Plymouth, UK. Plymouth, England. Plymouth, England is from where the Pilgrims, as in New England, set sail from, which was unplanned. It was due to the Speedwell leaking, right? The Pilgrims originally had two ships, the Mayflower and the Speedwell, and the Speedwell, shortly after departing England, sprung leaks and then returned. And so they returned to Plymouth. They didn't originally depart from Plymouth, but they had to return to repair the Speedwell. So they returned to Plymouth. This happened twice. They set sail again, and the Speedwell sprung leaks again, and then they returned to Plymouth a second time. So they departed 3 times. But anyway, and by the way, it's believed that there were some people sabotaging the Speedwell. But anyway, so they returned to Plymouth twice because of this issue. Coincidentally, they also purchased their land deed in Virginia. So they purchased the land in Virginia, the deed to the land that is in Virginia, from a company named Plymouth. And that was a coincidence. They coincidentally purchased their land deed for their land in Virginia came from a company named Plymouth. And then they ended up returning to Plymouth twice. But also, coincidentally, they chose Plymouth to begin their colony, which had already been given the name Plymouth by a cartographer years before the Pilgrims arrived. In other words, they had nothing to do with the fact or naming the land Plymouth. It was already named. And so that was another coincidence. So you had all of these coincidences with Plymouth. In other words, the bomb evacuation sign in Plymouth, England, is the bomb evacuation sign that we were looking for February 24th. Plymouth, the name, symbolizes America. So this sign was in the UK, but it symbolizes America because of what I have just explained, because the Pilgrims crossing and the landing on Plymouth Rock was the spiritual founding of America, which is why America was founded on a relationship with God. The only other nation other than Israel to have been founded on the Bible and a relationship with the God of the Bible. There is, beyond stunning confirmation, that March 19th, 2024 is also the date for the bomb in New York City. But I'll just type this one for now. March 19th, 2024 will be 108 days, which is 36 plus 36 plus 36 days, after December 2nd, 2023, and the Okinawa and Dachau concentration camp signs. These were these World War II signs, which is 108 days, 108 days before the predicted bomb in New York City on March 19th, but also the World War II bomb sign is connecting to this, as I just explained. Okay, so I searched, this is where it gets very interesting, actually. I searched 108 Hiroshima. I did a search for 108 Hiroshima, okay, to see if there would be 108 in something related to Hiroshima that would confirm this as a second witness, this 108 days connection, because that's what's required here, right? We can't just have a 108 days connection and say, oh, well, therefore, it works, right? That would be completely arbitrary, because you need a second witness, which is what the Bible says is required. And again, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. Okay, so is there something related between 108 and Hiroshima? Okay, 108, which is 36 plus 36 plus 36, hints at 666, because I explained earlier, I did explain earlier that the number 36 symbolizes 666, the number of the Antichrist. Okay, and so the answer here, 108 of the 123 trams, let's just get this out of the way too. So 123 is the 42nd semi-prime number. That's also Antichrist, because again, the number 42 in Bible prophecy symbolizes the Antichrist, okay? And a semi-prime number is a number that is only divisible by two other prime numbers, and that's why God uses semi-prime numbers as well. All right, let's start again. We're talking about a relationship between the number 108 and Hiroshima. Is there such a relationship? There is. 108 of the 123 trams, okay, these are street trolleys, right? Street cars, right? Not trains necessarily, but street cars, right? Like in the beginning of, back in the day in New York City or in San Francisco still, right? Okay. So there are 108 of the 123 trams were destroyed by the bomb. In other words, the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. The Okinawa Hiroshima bomb sign on December 2nd, area code 212, which is what December 2nd hints at, was the same day as the Dachau concentration camp sign and trapped planes in Munich sign due to a record 44 inches of snow. Okay, this is explained in the Okinawa Obama video, which is a must-watch video. It's very important and amazing. Okay, I'm not even scratching the surface of all of this, of course. Now, again, on December 2nd, which was known ahead of time that it would be a step in the trail, so we were expecting bomb-related signs on the state, and then we had the Hiroshima-Okinawa bomb sign, which is explained in the Obama-Okinawa video, okay? But this is New York because it hints at the area code 212, the area code of Manhattan. But on that same day, one of the signs was this Dachau concentration camp sign, which I'm not explaining in this video. But it involved trapped planes in Munich. Because Dachau concentration camp is the first symbolic, because God uses firsts for his signs, right? This was the first Nazi concentration camp, and it was also the headquarters for training people for the other concentration camps, okay? It's historically very important, in other words, and it's just north of Munich in Germany. In Munich, the airport, the international airport of Munich, is also just north of Munich, okay? So, in other words, this Munich airport sign is hinting at the Dachau concentration camp. Now, the sign was the 44 inches, which is clearly making it a sign because of the 44th president Antichrist, who will be locking people up in concentration camps soon. Okay. The sign was the trapped planes, because and so the big story in Europe was the winter storm that hit, but the biggest place that it hit was Munich. Although it was a Europe-wide story, the story was about the many flight delays, but it was largely due to Munich, because Munich was completely shut down. If you look at the images, it's like a snow disaster. It's just, covered in 44 inches of snow. That's like, almost 4 feet, right? And so what's interesting too is you can see the images of these trapped planes covered in ice. They're just like frozen, and they're literally, you can see it, they're just completely covered in ice. One of the planes has got its nose in the air as if it's like about to take off, which is interesting because it's just more emphasis of the trapped symbolism. Like it can't get off the ground. It's trying to, but it can't. But also these private planes, because this was a private plane that had its, it was a private jet that had its nose pointed into the air. They were on their way to, ironically, the global warming summit in the desert in the UAE. That's completely ironic, and therefore confirmation of this being a prophetic sign, because that is Antichrist religion, the global warming religion, the religion of the left, who have done away with God and replaced God with another religion, because no one has no religion. Everyone has a religion, and politics have become their religion, but importantly, collectivism politics, leftist, socialist collectivism politics. And that's what the global warming hysteria is. It's a Trojan horse for communism, which is evil from Satan. And that's why the global warming hysteria is evil from Satan. And that's why the left is evil and from Satan. The left, okay? So anyway, so you get my point. You got the trapped planes. Okay. It took some thought as to how train symbolism would connect. So I thought about that. I thought about it all day, actually. And here's my little story here. Today, I walked through the Jewish quarter of Krakow. I had an errand I needed to do there, and I hadn't been there in over a year. I coincidentally had to take a train to get there. I first read about the 108 Hiroshima tram trains on my phone as I was getting on to the train at the beginning of the day. By the end of the day, I was getting back onto the train to go home, and it hit me. The Okinawa sign pointed to the 108 trains in the mass death in Hiroshima, and the Okinawa sign was on the same day as the trapped Dachau concentration camp sign. Because this hints at the death trains to the Jewish concentration camps. This was huge, and this was designed by God. This day that I had, because during that day I was in the Jewish quarter of Krakow, and there is a location in there which has a little monument to those that lost their lives in the concentration camp in Krakow. And so that, it was on my mind that day, which was necessary to come to this massive, amazing conclusion here. So, by the way, the Okinawa sign pointed to Hiroshima because that's where the planes took off when they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima. And that's the part of the connection here in the Okinawa sign, which is explained in the other video, okay? And again, Hiroshima is associated with the number 108. And this Okinawa sign is 108 days, and that's what led to this discovery of the 108 trains that were destroyed in the mass death in Hiroshima. But that is actually concentration camp symbolism, because the Jews were shipped to the concentration camps on trains. Regarding the Niki Nicolaitan sign on February 24th, again, 2 times 24, G 2424, Jesus, Nicolaitan doctrine. Haley was born exactly 350 months after Biden was born. Okay, and Biden is, of course, Antichrist symbolism. 50 weeks equals the Feast of Weeks, which is the 50th day. That's what it means, the Pentecost, Feast of Weeks, which is why 50 weeks connections in his signs, God's signs, right, are prophetic when in context. Okay, and 50 weeks is 350 days, which hints at G 350 in the concordance, which is the word that means examine or judge, to investigate, examine, inquire into, scrutinize, sift, question, specifically in a forensic sense of a judge, to hold an investigation, to interrogate, examine the accused or witnesses, to judge of, estimate, determine the excellence or defects of any person or thing, as in the church. Because again, the main theme of God's big picture of end times warning signs is judgment warning for the church. And you will only hear that about that truth on this channel, as far as I know. February 24th, 2024 was 230% of a year after Biden's mandate for 84 million workers on 11/4, which hints at 11 times 4 equals 44, 99 years exactly after King Tut's tomb was discovered. Okay, that gives us a 9 and 23. So again, this February 24th, what I'm doing right here is I'm giving some confirmations for the relevance of Niki Nicolaitan Haley being a prophetic sign that is warning of judgment for the church on February 24th. And so what I'm doing is demonstrating or explaining the connections that are related to this theme that connect to February 24th, okay? And so February 24th was 230% of a year, which since that's 23, after this date, okay? And this date was 99 years after the discovery of King Tut's tomb. And this date was known ahead of time because of this 99 years connection and other connections. This date was known to be very, very important, and it was very, very important quite a while before this date, okay? This date was the day that Biden announced the details of the man ends with a date for the 84 million workers. Now, Obama, the name Obama in Hebrew gematria equals 84. He was also born on the date 8/4, and he will be the 48th president, which is what 8/4 hints at. Furthermore, his name in simple English gematria is 32. Obama is 32, which is 8 times 4, but it is also 4 times 8, which hints at the 48th president. The word bomb in Hebrew gematria is also 84, and is also 32 in simple English gematria. So Obama actually hints at Obama. What's also a confirmation of that is the very prophetic the Barak bombings in Beirut in 1983. And the Barak bombings hint at Barack Obama. All right, and that connects to all kinds of other things. I'm not going to go off anymore onto that tangent, rabbit trail. Okay, now the man ends with a date for the thing is a confirmation that it is the mark of the Antichrist. Of course, King Tut is Antichrist symbolism because the king of Egypt in the Bible is a type for the Antichrist, and his tomb was discovered in the Valley of Kings also. Anyway, that's a 9 and a 23 that confirms the signs and connections because of the 99 years followed by the 230% of a year. This is extremely amazing because it connects to the Nicolaitan Niki sign. Therefore, like I am saying, the primary purpose of the thing, the mark of the Antichrist, is to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians. And the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist because it is judgment on these Christians. And one of the things it is judgment for is their doctrine. Because as I mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons why they have told themselves that it couldn't be the mark of the Antichrist is because of the heretical Gnostic doctrine that they have, that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. And one such work would be the taking of the mark of the Antichrist. Did these quote-unquote Christians really believe that the Lord would blast it in the sky, writing it in the clouds or something? Or what this is the mark of the Antichrist, don't take it? Did they really think it would be super obvious and that everyone in the world would know what it is? It was for those with eyes to see, that were understanding spiritual things. Anyway, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that one cannot repent after taking the mark of the Antichrist. And if you have taken it, you really need to repent and beg for God's forgiveness. Your chromosomes have been altered with snake chromosomes, the symbol of evil in the Bible. Anyway, the purpose of the prediction being made in this video is to prove what I just said. Believe me, I know far better than you why the purpose of this prediction. Please don't tell yourself that you know why this prediction is being made. It's not for entertainment. And it's not to say, hey, the end times are soon. Because, everyone knows that. It's to prove what I just said. The reason why God has given me a voice is to prove the matter. And what I just said, the two things, the Nicolaitan doctrine and the mark of the Antichrist, what they specifically are overwhelmingly demonstrated through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And it will be proven, this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections will be proven to be true with the prediction. And that is the purpose of this prediction, in order to prove to you the things that I have just said, and therefore, debate closed. End of debate. No more controversy. No more discussion at all, period, as to whether the thing is the mark of the Antichrist or not. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional false form of religious worship or additional technology. And it does not need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly, quote unquote, all Christians will be raptured. And like I said, okay, enough. Okay, so the mark of the Antichrist was exactly 1,170 days before February 24th. And again, February 24th, 2424, Jesus, right? Greek concordance. Okay, and this is amazing because this number is very important in God's signs. This number 117, first of all, but also this number 1,170, because it equals 390 plus 390 plus 390, which is the word in Strong's Greek concordance that is the word meaning return. James used this word when he quoted Amos 9:11 regarding the return of the Lord to rebuild his temple. And in God's signs, God has associated the number 117 with the mark of the Antichrist because the number 117 symbolizes division, divide, a separation. Jesus, the first fruits, was resurrected on the 17th day of the first month. It was a separation, the resurrection of God's faithful from the others that will be going to hell is a separation, for example. So that's what this number symbolizes. That's what the purpose of the mark is to divide and separate. Oh, let it divide. In Hebrew, gematria equals 117. This comes in Genesis chapter 1, verse 17. The division of the of the waters. For example, the first, division. So at the beginning, okay, and that chapter 1 is about dividing the light from the darkness and the waters, right? Okay, so this connection is huge. But also, by the way, the Great American Eclipse Judgment Warning Sign, which divided the nation and peaked over the middle of the country, and the upcoming eclipse will also cross over the path of the first one where it peaked. Will be another division, anyway, I don't get off too much off track here, but what I wanted to say, that eclipse, which was a new moon, was the completion of the 1170th Browns lunation, which is why that eclipse hinted at the return of Jesus, because again, it was 390 plus 390 plus 390, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, the return of Jesus. But also, the Lord's return, the second coming on the Day of Atonement, not the rapture, but the Day of Atonement, Judgment Day, will be during the 1260th Browns lunation. And that's stunning beyond words, because the Lord will return on the Day of Atonement in 2024, but this is a confirmation of it. And by the way, this is the purpose of this prediction being made in this video, to prove this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which centers at the center of the web on the Day of Atonement, the Lord's return, the second coming. It will prove that it is true, and therefore case closed, no more debate. The day is knowable, and it is the Day of Atonement, October 12th, 2024, case closed when the prediction comes to pass. But that will be during the 1260th Browns lunation, and that is the number in Bible prophecy regarding the period of the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will be defeated on the Day of Atonement. Okay, so that's the number 1170 for you, and that's why it's stunning beyond belief that Thing Day. So what do I mean by Thing Day? This day right here, Thing Day, okay? I should have spoken a little bit about this in the beginning here. This was December 11th, 2020. This was the day that the 3-letter organization approved the thing. And Trump trumpeted the approval of the thing from the Oval Office in his thing speech and other things. So this was Thing Day. And by the way, Thing Day, so Thing Day, December 11th, 2020 is exactly this return number of days to this day that symbolizes Jesus, 224. Right? Again, 8 plus 8 plus 8, Jesus, and G2424. Okay, so now what next? The connection is huge. Therefore, once again, the Nicolaitan, rule over the laity, doctrine of paid pastors in evangelical churches is the Nicolaitan doctrine that Jesus hates and is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. The Great American Eclipse that peaked at 1:17 p.m. in St. Louis was the completion of the 1170th Browns lunation, and it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis in a plane crash, and this is the big reason why it'll be in St. Louis. It will point to the eclipse that peaked at 1:17 p.m., and the 2 eclipses engender an X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And anyway, this connection here to Nikki Nicolaitan and her defeat in the 8th state, the 8th governor, is all confirmation of the thing, because it connects with Thing Day, being the thing to divide the Nicolaitan Church because of its Nicolaitan doctrine that Jesus is making war on currently with the sword of his mouth. Okay, knowledge, spiritual knowledge, information for those that are watching, etc. Okay, here's another one. The stuck Suez Canal ship was symbolism for clogged things in one's body. Okay, if you're watching this, you can read what I'm saying here. From the thing. So the thing results in clogged passageways in one's body. Okay, you get the idea, right? If you're not watching this and just listening. The stuck Suez Canal ship, if you recall, the big ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal in March of 2021, right after the thing was released. when people were taking it, right? Which was, by the way, 6 plus 6 days after Biden's big thing speech, his first public address after having shoplifted the referendum. Okay, the Suez Canal ship, if you look at it from above, it was a thing that was clogging the world's shipping trade artery, right? Which hinted at the clogged passageways within one's body caused by the thing. It also blocked $9 billion of trade per day, and 9 symbolizes God's judgment. And the thing was promoted for greed, for money, on a superficial level, but on a spiritual level, it was promoted for evil. Okay, it became unstuck due to the moon tide. That's the story when it became unstuck, which was March 29th, 2021. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, the day that it got unstuck. It became unstuck as a result of the moon tide. Now, do I mention it here? Yes. The number 29 symbolizes the moon because a moon cycle is 29 days, 29 and a half days. The moon symbolizes Jesus. The moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. Also, the sun symbolizes God the Father, but the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. And watching for the timing of the moon is important in the Bible because it symbolizes watching for the timing of the Lord's return through his prophetic signs, which include moon signs, including this moon tide sign. That was the reason why the ship became unstuck. Okay? After many days. So the date 2/24, February 24th, was 290% of a calendar year, which hints at the moon after the ship came unstuck due to the moon tide. And again, the ship being stuck was all about the thing. It was 6 plus 6 days after Biden's big thing speech in his first public address after having shoplifted the referendum. And that speech was in turn 90 days after Thing Day, which was 9 months exactly after CVD Disease Day. And also the SN9 SpaceX, as in X is symbolism for the mark, mishap on Thing Day when the thing was approved. That fell off of its platform and on and on. Okay. And Thing Day was 1,170 days to February 24th. So you got that? Not only does the stuck Suez Canal ship connect with 290% of a year to February 24th, but it also connects back to Thing Day, as I just mentioned, and again, Thing Day connects with 1,170 days to February 24th. In other words, February 24th was huge. It was very, very important in God's signs, and the reason, the theme, the story that God is telling is judgment on the Nicolaitan church through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. Does not need an additional something. It's not a precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, I think I've made the case here. One more thing, I think. The number 89 is the 24th prime number. Nikki Haley was born 89.89% of a calendar year, which hints at 2424, February 24th. G 2424 equals Jesus, because 89 is the 24th prime number. Okay, so Nikki Haley was born 89.89% of a year before the last American to step off of the moon, which was symbolism for America's departure from Christ. It was Apollo 17, and that's why the 2 space shuttle disasters were exactly 17 years apart, and why the 2 planes exploded in the 2 towers 17 minutes apart. It was a point to Apollo 17 and the departure from the moon, which was symbolism for America's departure from Christ, and that's why the date that America last stepped foot on the moon and stepped off of the moon was exactly 144 weeks after Hawaii, where Obama is from, became the first state to legalize abortions. 89.89% is also 47 weeks, and 47 hints at 40 days and 7 days in the book of Genesis regarding the flood judgment, but it also hints at the date 7-4, the date that symbolizes America, and also the 47th president will make Barack Obama the president again. Michelle Obama will become the 47th president after it's predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. There was another explosion sign on February 24th. Again, this was the day of the largest peacetime evacuation and explosion of the historic World War II bomb. But there was another explosion sign on February 24th. The other one exploded, as I mentioned, after sunset on the 23rd, which was still relevant because it was Purim. But this one exploded on the 24th. Okay, the explosive was detonated outside of the office of the Attorney General of Alabama. February 24th, which again hints at Jesus, because 24, 8 plus 8 plus 8, but also G2424. I think I've said that like 100 times now. February 24th was 8 days. The date of this explosion outside of the Attorney General of Alabama was 8 days, and that's relevant because February 24th was all about the number 8, as we explained earlier, all of the 8 signs, okay, including the 8th state, okay, and we were talking about a state here, Alabama, okay. So February 24th was 8 days after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that embryos are children on February 16th, which is at 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6. Also, Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. February 24th is 24 days, which is 8 plus 8 plus 8 days, which hints at Jesus, before the predicted explosion in New York City. Okay? And this 8 plus 8 plus 8 days connection from February 24th to the predicted explosion in New York City is confirmed with this 8 days that precedes February 24th to February 16th, when the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that embryos are children. All right? And again, the Attorney General's office detonated this bomb because of this. In other words, someone placed the bomb at the office of the Attorney General of Alabama because of the Alabama Supreme Court's ruling. It was a protest. Okay, but there's more. All right, the reason for the connections involving the church and the thing to the day of the Nikki, Nicolaitan, Haley sign, which was 888, on February 24th, which is in 2024, which is at 2424 Jesus, on the same day as the explosion in Alabama, is that Alabama is the 22nd state, and its flag is a blood red cross on a white backdrop. And that's all that it is. It's a white flag with a blood red X from corner to corner. Okay? And again, the X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And the reason for this is because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in Ezekiel, the book, would have been a Tav mark. And the Tav letter in ancient Hebrew was an X. The Tav letter is the 22nd and last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, in the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist will be enforced through the rationing of food, which is hinted at with Caesar Augustus in ancient Rome, when he took complete control of the food supply in 22 AD. Caesar Augustus is why the Antichrist, Obama, was born in August. Barack Obama will take complete control of the food supply and restrict the buying and selling of food to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. And also, Genesis chapter 22 is symbolic of taking the mark of the Antichrist. Because Genesis chapter 22 is when Abraham was justified through his actions, through his following through on the command to sacrifice his son Isaac. And then God said, "Now I know that you fear me." If you are worried about losing your job, and therefore you need to take the mark of the Antichrist because of that, you don't fear God. Because the mark of the Antichrist is a spiritual abomination. And every Christian should know that. Furthermore, all things are spiritual abominations because they all use aborted fetal stem cells in their development. So every Christian should know this, and they should have known this years ago. But all is being revealed now. This thing is exposing all of that, making people open their eyes, right, to the whole decades-long history behind the thing, just for example, and to the thing industry and how corrupt it is. Okay? But, what was I going to say also? Well, there's this too. The mark of the Antichrist changes one's chromosomes. And a chromosome is two pairs of two arms. The right and the left, divided into the small and the big arm. It's a 2 and 2. That's also the reason for the mark of the Antichrist being symbolized by the number 22. Oh, and it's a spiritual abomination because it changes your chromosomes. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, so. All right, and so anyway, taking the mark of the Antichrist gives someone blood disease, and that's why the 22nd state has a big red cross, X, on its flag. A blood red cross, right? X, I should say. Okay, so the explosion was at the office of the Attorney General of the Alabama Supreme Court's rule, because of the Alabama's Supreme Court's ruling that embryos are children on the date 216, which hints at 6 times 6 times 6. In other words, God has communicated that the CVD thing and all things are a spiritual abomination because they use embryonic fetal cell lines in their development. This is what God is communicating here with this very, very important connection and sign here. And this will be proven 8 plus 8 plus 8 days after this explosion at the office of the Attorney General of Alabama. That is the purpose of this prediction. It is to prove that the thing is a spiritual abomination in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it. It isn't a precursor. Okay, so this is amazing. This is so amazing, right? This connection here. All right. Again, on the day of the explosion in the 22nd state, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist, with its blood red X on the flag, the Dow was closed at 39,131. Because, again, Jesus' blood on the cross was between the 3rd and the 9th hour, and G131 in the concordance is the word for blood disease. This coincided with this explosion in Alabama because of the ruling regarding embryonic fetal stem cells. And this is the 22nd state we are talking about with its blood red cross, because this connection means that these things are spiritual abominations because they use embryonic fetal stem cell lines in their development. Case closed. But if you, for some reason, have any doubt, the prediction will prove this. And to not appreciate that the prediction will prove this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction that is from God. Like I like to say, you might as well turn off the video now and not watch any more videos on this channel. Because believe me, I know far better than you the reason why God has provided this prediction. All right, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that March 3rd would be a step in the trail because it is 8 days after February 24th, the signs that I just explained. So this email here is explaining what happened on March 3rd, which was known in advance to be an important date that God was pointing to regarding the prediction for Kamala Harris's plane crash, for example. Okay, so it was known on February 24th that March 3rd would be a step in the trail to Harris's predicted crash on March 19th. Well, like I said at the beginning of this video, it was learned shortly after that March 19th would also be a step, and that the date for her crash would be 8 days after this, on March 27th. Trump equals 88 in simple English gematria. March 3rd is 8 plus 8 days before March 19th. Okay, so anyway, this 8 plus 8 days was why March 3rd was known to be a step. On the morning of March 4th, the Supreme Court of the U.S. unanimously decided that the 14th Amendment, Section 3, did not apply to Trump, and that he would be on the presidential election ballot. The 14th Amendment, Section 3, hints at 314, right? Which is the area code of St. Louis, where Harris's plane is predicted to crash 8 plus 8 plus 8 days later on March 27th, after this decision regarding Trump, which his name is 88 in gematria, simple English gematria, and also Donald J. Trump is 888 in English gematria, okay? And so Trump is the sign here on the date March 3rd, which is part of this pattern of signs at intervals of 8 days. Okay, and that's why we had the 14th Amendment, Section 3. I knew a long time ago all of this talk about the 14th Amendment, Section 3 was a prophetic sign that would somehow fit into the big picture eventually, and most likely point to the area code 314, where it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, St. Louis. And finally, it has come to pass with the Supreme Court ruling on the amendment. It's the climax to this story about the 14th Amendment, Section 3. It's a prophetic sign from God. By the way, 314 is pi, 3.14, which is God's transcendental number that he has baked into his creation. Also, God is using this 314 in his signs, not just the area code, not just 14th Amendment, Section 3, but many other instances in different ways to communicate a couple of other things here. I'll just go through it quickly. One, Isaiah chapter 31:4, which describes the lion's roar, which is symbolism for turbulence that will bring down Kamala Harris's plane into the area code 314. Okay, also in Exodus 3:14, which is amazing because that is where God replied to Moses after he was asked, what is his name? And God said that his name is I am, and the symbol for I am in Hebrew is the exact same symbol for pi, which is 3.14, which is why it is astounding that God's transcendental number, 3.14, is hinted at in Exodus 3:14. It's, in other words, a proof that the Bible is the Word of God. The date of the decision was 3/4, but 3/3 is 8 plus 8 days to March 19th. However, 3/3 was a Sunday, and the Supreme Court of the U.S. would not deliver their decision on a Sunday. Therefore, I think this connection is valid. I think what confirms this is that on 3-3, the governor from the 8th state beat Trump, 88, and won the delegates, the 19 delegates in Washington, D.C., where the Supreme Court of the U.S. is. So that would be how God would do it, because the Supreme Court can't operate on a Sunday, so he would tie it in with another sign on the Sunday in Washington, D.C., where the Supreme Court of the U.S. is. Okay, and so this hinted at the 8 plus 8 days to the 19th. Okay, furthermore, March 4th, 3-4, is 8 plus 8 days inclusive count. Okay, well, anyway. Additionally, March 4th hints at 3-1-4, as the slash in between the 3 and the 4 hints at a 1. What is also possible is that Harris's crash is around midnight on March 19th to March 20th. I do think that is a possibility. It doesn't seem practical. I don't know why she would be flying at midnight, but it does seem to be like it's a possibility. The Lord's connections to 320 have been discussed. For example, 320 is exactly 490 months after the song "Every Breath You Take" by The Police was released. I'm writing to friends, actually. They know what I'm talking about, and I'll have to explain that in another video, but this is very, very important. We'll see what happens on March 20th, but it should be something. I don't know what, some sort of prophetic sign probably. Okay, because, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. On this same March 3rd date, Harris was in the news for her big, forceful speech calling for a ceasefire in Israel. And that speech was in Washington. So there you have another Harris sign making this all relevant to Kamala Harris. Also, on this and that's prophetic because, of course, calling for the ceasefire in Israel is against God's word, against God's plan. It's what the Antichrist will do in leading the world in demanding Israel divide itself and make Jerusalem an international city. This is where all of this is headed. It is Antichrist. That's why Kamala Harris's forceful speech calling for a ceasefire, demanding Israel's ceasefire. This is the left. This is the beginning of the Democrat Party leaving their traditional moderate position and going left and ganging up on Israel. All right. Also, on this 3-3 date, it was reported that Camilla, which hints at Kamala, Queen, okay, because the death of Kamala Harris will lead to the Queen of America, Michelle Obama, becoming the president. Camilla, Queen Consort, was stepping down, which hints at Biden stepping down, making Michelle Obama the president after she replaces Kamala Harris, from her administrative duties temporarily. She has been busy while the king has been treated for cancer. So this is all hinting at the stepping down and the rise of the Antichrist king through the death of Kamala Harris and the Queen, Michelle Obama. Also, God pairs the numbers 88 and 9 together to confirm his signs. This 8 plus 8 days is paired with the 9-0 decision by the Supreme Court. The 9-0 decision is the news story. It was emphasized how it was unanimous, 9-0. Trump, again, equals 88, trumpeted into Channel 9 News on 9/11 in 2001. He mentioned that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. Wall Street is named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. I also recently learned that if I recall correctly, the latitudinal line for the Twin Towers is at 40. And Trump's tower, that became the tallest after the Twin Towers collapsed is 40 Wall Street. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.